Welcome to Speaking with Elvis podcast. This is your host, Elvis Prince Tonya. In our first introductory episode, I promised you that I was going to share on this episode the one thing that would change your communication journey and even your life. And today we are going to dissect it. Now, if you don't remember anything about what I'm going to say today in this episode, I want you to remember this that communication is not about saying a lot, but it's about saying what matters most. I want to repeat that. Communication is not about saying a lot, but it's about saying what matters most. So many people confuse talking with communication, but I like to tell you that everybody talks. Everybody talks, but not everybody communicates. Communication is the skill that can be learned. It's a skill that you acquire in order to share your message, share your voice in the way that is so clear, concise, and authentic. That's what communication is. So you've seen people in your circle, it could be a place of work, in your family, and that person can be you. Whenever that person stands up to speak, you want to find a place to go. You want to run away. You want to find something to do because the person would go on and on and on and on. You love them. It could be a member of family that you love dearly. It could be your friend that you love dearly, but you can't stand whenever they stop talking because you know that they will take forever and they will just speak about a lot. So that's where we're going to make a distinction here. So I've seen people in my community as African, right, who love to speak. People who just love to have the spotlight, especially when it comes to speaking. They think that maybe just saying too much means that they are actually sharing valuable information. But I'm here to tell you that you don't. You don't share valuable information by saying a lot. You don't share the essential by saying a lot. I've seen people in different social situations when they are giving 5, 10, or even 20 minutes to speak, they would go double of that time. Because in their mind, they think that by saying too much, by going on and on, they are sharing so much valuable information. But I'm here to tell you that you don't. And I've seen people trying to pitch the product or service. They have gifted maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes to share their story and the story behind the product. But they would go on and on. They want to take more time. I wonder what in the world that they're going to be sharing in 20, 30 minutes of just presenting your product, of just pitching your service or product. Here's the thing about that. You need 5 minutes if you want to pitch your product. You need 5 minutes to 10 minutes if you want to pitch your service to really say something that's short enough to reveal interest and long enough to cover the subject. That's all you need whenever you're pitching something. That's what you need, the essential, the one thing that can actually matter, in your presentation. It's not about going from the beginning to the end, going from up to down, that you can actually shade the things that would entice interest. No, you have to be able to be succinct. To be brevity is absolutely important in communication. That's why saying less, it's absolutely crucial. Saying less is really crucial in communication. I'm going to tell you something. When I first arrived in US, as I mentioned in my first episode, I couldn't speak a word of English, but my natural tendency was to embrace a learning in a totality. I want to learn everything. I just want to dive in and learn so much to be able to learn the language. But it didn't work. It did not work until somebody reminds me that you don't have to embrace everything at once. You don't have to, every time that you read, you have to look up every single word in the dictionary. In the end, it would not definitely work. And I found out to be true. So when I was actually trying to read or find the definition of each word in the book, trying to learn vocabulary, grammar, the sentence structures, and different things about a language, it did not work. It did not advance me. It was until I started to do things one at a time. What was that? So I would one day just focus on reading. even though I couldn't understand some of the words that I was reading, but I would just read. That's the one thing I would focus on. And then other times, I would want to find one or two words that I would look up in the dictionary. I would not try to look up maybe 10 words because I will not remember any of those. And that's absolutely important in learning a language. It's just one thing at a time, one vocabulary at a time, one word at a time, one sentence structure at a time. You try to incorporate that, you try to apply that in your life. That's how you can actually master that one thing, and then you go to the next. And this is the one thing that I also remember in my speaking, in my communication journey when I joined this organization called Toastmasters, where you learn how to be a little effective communicator and even leader. So in that organization, in each meeting, it is required that a word is chosen, that every single person who has the chance to speak that day will be able to implement or incorporate that word in their speech. So, which means you learn just one word a day. You try to apply that in the day. Once you master that, because when you apply a word a few times, it starts to become part of your vocabulary. And that's what exactly I have applied in my own life in order to improve myself vocabulary wise in many other aspects of life. It's about one thing, that's communication. It's about one thing that you can do to change the entire spectrum of your communication. It's about saying what's essential. It's about saying what matters. Really forget the idea that you have to say a lot in order to make sense. No, just think about the tank. Usually there's a saying, I don't know if it's a general saying, but growing up, I learned that, it is usually the empty tank that makes a lot of noise. You see, it's the same with communication. When there's not so much in your speech, in your presentation, in your conversation, that's why you have the tendency to say a lot. People tend to want to explain something that they already said. Because if you said it well the first time, you wouldn't have to explain, right? That's a rule of the game. That's communication. That's essential of communication. You don't have to explain what you have said. Because if you want to, if you find the need to explain what you have said, you have not said it well the first time. Keep the essential. The lesson of this episode is simply that anytime that you want to speak, whether it is a one-on-one conversation or you are in the group, so it's important to always ask yourself beforehand, what is the one thing that I want people to remember? What is the one thing that I want people to remember? Always ask yourself that. And second, try to remove all the fluff. Try to remove anything that is not relevant to the message that you are trying to convey. So going left and right, it's like circular reasoning. You go around, just around, just around to say the same thing. And that I've seen many people do that all the time. They just go around and saying the same thing, repeating themselves in different ways, repeating themselves. And some people would just go what we usually call the drama dumping. They would tell you so much about their lives. I mean, in that particular circumstance, you don't have to say your whole life. You have to say the part of your life that is relevant to the topic or the idea being discussed. So that's how you have to always ask, what is the one thing that I want people to remember in this speech, in this presentation, in this conversation? The one thing that I want people to remember, try to remove any clutter, anything that's just there to fill out your speech, to take away even the essential message that you want to convey. So remember, the one thing that can change your communication skill from today is your ability to say what matters most. Again, the one thing that matters most. That's how communication is. And you want to say it in the way that is so clear and that is so concise and compelling. I call it the three C's. Communication is not about doing so much more, it's about doing less, but the essential. And it is the same when I teach communication, when I train my students in communication. I just don't pour on them all of the techniques, all of the tips. No, I usually bring it one at a time. We will learn one thing today. We will try to incorporate in our life. And then when we master it, when it is incorporated in the way that we converse, the way that we communicate, now we can move on to the next technique, next insight, next practical tool to be able to incorporate in our communication. So that's how it is working. So think about it, just the essential that you have to do. So now this week, try to just think about whenever you engage in the conversation, or maybe you are called to say a toast at the dinner table, or maybe give a speech at the wedding, or any situation that you are called to speak. Now, always keep in mind the one thing that you want people to remember, and try to leave anything out that is not relevant, that is not congruent with what you are trying to share. Leave it out. It doesn't have to be there. It's good to see less, but the essential, than say more, and you lose people in the process. Because to be honest with you, our attention span is so short nowadays that if you, in the 3 minute speech, in the next I would say the next 15 to 20 seconds, if you don't captivate people's attention, people will check out. People will check out. That's why going to the point, right to the point, is essential. What matters most is essential. It's important to keep that in mind. That's the one thing that can actually change the way that you communicate. Now, you no longer are victim of circular reasoning or drama dumping and just going around the circle and saying the same thing and telling your whole story. Now you can focus on the one thing that you want people to remember from that moment of speech. So, with that, I think that would do it for our episode today. Next episode, we are going to share a little bit more, and that would be about how to find your voice. How to find your voice so that people can listen to you. How to find your unique voice so that people can listen to you. That's what we're going to be sharing next episode. Until then, use what we talked today, the one thing that can actually transform your communication is the one thing that matters most in your communication. Going directly to the point. Make it short to reveal interest and long enough to cover the subject. That's how you start to become a good and effective communicator. See you next episode.